question who's the MVP. God damn, best in the world right now. You agree with Michael? Huh?
Nah, this is I mean, come on, Micah. I get what you're saying. He's one of the best, and no doubt about that. The numbers speak, and we just, like I said, we just speak in numbers. Oh, of course. But unfortunately, we play a team sports, and there's other teams in it, and unfortunately, winning means something. Mm-hmm. So if winning didn't mean something, then okay, I get it. But like, come on, the ability, most valuable player is the ability to not only get the numbers, but to carry your team to levels that they're not usually used to seeing. And that's what the MVP is all about. It's not about mediocrity. It's about uplifting your team. If this was an individual sport, Joe Burrow, the MVP. But you got teammates. How do you uplift them? How do you make them better? How does your team come around and you just galvanize your team and uplift them and just take them to the next level? That's what the MVP does. And so will he get there one day? No doubt about it. He should. He has the talent to do that, but just not this year.
Yeah, and I don't see it either. You know, I love all of the praise towards Joe, and he has a phenomenal ability, a phenomenal arm, a phenomenal gift. And he has two phenomenally gifted wide receivers also. We want to now reach in and pull out all the good things Joe Burrow's doing and say he's an MVP. But we want to leave the bad things now. And there are bad things that we're not talking about. There have been games that offense had an opportunity to drive down the last second and win a game, and they didn't get it done. And you don't attribute that to Joe's failure, but you give him all the credit for all the great yards he's thrown. Let me tell you the only way I could give it to him. Now, if this team had started 0-6, because Joe was hurt, and he was on the sideline, and he wasn't part of all those 6 losses. And then he comes back, and he's phenomenal, putting up phenomenal numbers, and his team ends up somewhere 9-8 and make the playoffs. I'm like, boy, yes, Joe could be in that hunt for the MVP. But since he played in these games that got them to this record, it's not like he didn't play in those games. You just want to now toss those games aside and say only these games that matter. Stop. Let's stop doing that. Yeah. We got to stop doing that. So I love Joe. I love that he's having a great game, a great season. I love he stayed healthy, but he got some fabulous wide receivers. And no, he doesn't belong in the MVP. Josh Allen got much less than him and has a better record than him. And I don't want to hear about, oh, look at the AFC East. With these kinds of records that they have now, we're beyond just looking at the division. Mm-hmm. So for me, it's a no.
Yeah, I don't think he should be the MVP. I don't even think it's a conversation. And I think Joe Burrow is brilliant. And he's done me, like I said, a great favor of looking the way that he's looked down the stretch, because he is still one of the most elite players that we have in the game. Yeah. And, you know, this idea that he is not capable of winning games and putting up numbers still in the league because of how they started is very silly, as we're seeing. However, to Michael's point, we can't ignore that they started the season 1-4. A quarter of the year, they were really bad. Right? Like, they still may not make the playoffs, and that is because of how they played. I understand their defense isn't great, but that's so what? Like, when we're talking about the MVP, you have to be able to overcome all of that. And Joe Burrow is brilliant. He is playing excellent football right now. But it's less about Joe Burrow, actually, and it's more about the other guys in the MVP conversation. Sometimes when people start putting up numbers, we just tend to ignore all of the consistency, because consistency is boring. Consistency is boring, even if it's at a high level, because we're starting to see something new, and this is exciting and flashy, and, oh, we forgot about him. No, we didn't forget about him. They had a terrible start to the season, which they consistently do, which is why he has to go on these runs, because they consistently start the season slow. So start the season the way that you're supposed to start the season with those expectations, and then they will be there in the end. We want to see Joe Burrow and the Bengals in the playoffs. We want to see the best against the best. But they weren't the best this year. And I can't dock Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Saquon Barkley, Jared Goff, because now they're having a surge. These men have played excellent football start to finish from week 1 until now. They deserve to be at the top of the conversation, and they can't be knocked off because of statistics. Even if those statistics are translating to wins now, because they weren't early. And that's not all on Joe Burrow, but we're talking about the MVP. Like, it shouldn't hurt Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and Saquon Barkley and Jared Goff because this is happening now.
Right, but every when you go through those losses, and I was looking through, every loss was not on that defense, and that's what we are intimating.
Right.
And we put out like it's not Joe's fault that the defense is not.
What's
that?
Intimating.
That's what we're intimating. That's what we're saying. Simply saying.
Not intimidated, not intimate.
Intimating. That's just pretty good.
Okay.
But that's what we're doing here. You know what I mean? You got to early on, like you talked about 1-4. That offense was not going. Mm-hmm. And he had opportunities to win games late, even though people were playing bad, like Patrick Mahomes does, like Josh Allen does, like everybody else does, and they didn't do it. So I can't do it. I can't put him in there. It's a great year, having a great year, but let's see if they can carry this thing over. But I do love the fact that he is airing that ball out, and he's going to help Jamar Chase get his money. And then next year, nobody will be talking about money this offseason. We'll see what he can do.
He's going to get paid, and they should have paid him earlier because the price has gone up. Well, Burrow and the Bengals face my Steelers on Saturday. The Bengals have to win to keep their playoff hopes alive, while the Steelers are trying to avoid losing their 4th in a row heading into the postseason. They have already locked up a postseason berth, but the division is still in hand this weekend. And Mike Tomlin talked about the importance of ending the losing streak. Now, the division is no longer up to them. It's up to the Ravens. But to Mike Tomlin's point, losing 4 in a row heading into the postseason is not how you want to be heading there. So, Paul, how important is it for the Steelers to get the stench off Saturday?
Well, I'm not sure if they can get the stench off. I mean, I think it's kind of stuck there. I don't think they're going to win the division, even if they win here. But I just think when you look at where the Pittsburgh Steelers were, and we talked about this a month ago, man, this could be a team that can challenge for a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. They went from a team that we thought can challenge for a Super Bowl to a team that we're not even sure if they can get a playoff win now, because they played the gauntlet at the end when they had to play Philly, Baltimore, and Kansas City. And not only did they lose, they just weren't even competitive. And that's the thing that I look at. Like, you can have some losses, but if you're at least competitive in some of these losses, like when I look at Minnesota losing to Detroit, when I see the Packers, their losses, they lost to all the top teams, but they were pretty competitive in all of theirs to where they might could sneak up on you in the playoffs. So I don't think the stitch is off the Steelers. And even with a win, I still think they're a one-and-done team. And, they just, I don't know where they go from here in the offseason.
And Coach is telling you the importance of that mentality that we're talking about. And we'll talk a lot about it because we're heading into the playoffs. He's saying right here, man, when we look back, we've had a great season. But right now, our mentality is we suck because we've gone through these last few losses, and we got to get that out of here and get the stench of it off of us. And I love how he built this game up. There's no greater way to do that than going up against a tough division opponent, So he's trying to tell them the importance of this win. That's a big win, even though you just lost to the Chiefs, the real big wins. You just lost to them. This
the
team
ones we needed to win.
Right, that you're going to see again in the playoffs. But we're going to beat this team that we may not see again in the playoffs. So after we beat them, we won't see them at all. So he's trying to build his team up to make a mentality, to get their mentality right. That's the importance going into the playoffs. We want to go in on a positive note. And, yes, they are trying to get that stench off them.
It's very, very important.
You guys are helping them, talking about how great Cincinnati, how great Joe Burrow is, because now he's going to present that. Hey, we got to play against the MVP at quarterback. And their defense has not played well lately. What tripped me out, guys, and I want to say this right fast, is everything I heard and read sounded like they tried to not say that this was a players-only meeting. Because a player-only meeting, it kind of denotes
something's up. Something's
real
wrong.
struggles,
Something's wrong.
real issues.
Something's wrong.
And they said every other word except that. But this was a players-only meeting, and they needed to have it because that defense is not doing its part.
And the defense is their calling card. I mean,
but if you're having a players-only meeting with one game to go,
Right.
that's not
It's
the
trouble.
time. That's
It's trouble.
trouble.
Well, I mean, you
Like,
have
that's
to at this
something-
point. You've lost 3 in a row. You're heading into the postseason.
Right.
You've got a tough game
It's
this
a
weekend
crisis.
against Cincinnati.
It's
This
a
is
crisis.
crisis
It's
time.
crisis
Like,
time.
if you
It's
don't do
crisis.
it now, you can't do it in the postseason. That's too late.
Right. It's
So,
crisis.
this game doesn't mean anything.
No.
It means something for Cincinnati, obviously. And as I said, it's in the Ravens' hands now whether or not they win the division. It's out of the Steelers' hands. But you can't go into the postseason losing 4 in a row. And then the 4 that you've lost in a row are to the three of the best teams in the postseason.
Right.
And
That you
a
wanna
team,
see
to your
again.
point, that people are calling for the MVP to be on that roster. So, no.
But also, though, what they will do, though, is look at the numbers that they've put up, or the lack thereof, on defense, right? Over that little period, and
Giving
say,
up 30 points a
this
game.
is not us. We know this is not us. And that's what they're saying now. Let's get back to us. Let's get back to us as we go into this playoff.
They've also got to cut down on the mistakes, too. The
Right,
turnovers are uncharacteristic, and you can't have them.
Right. They were up 13-0. Kansas City was up. Pittsburgh goes and score. Pittsburgh goes down again and score again. They get a penalty, and then Russ throws that interception, right, that backside interception. And now Kansas City goes and score. That game was much closer than it really ended up being.
Yeah,
if
those are
you
big
go
swings.
inside the game, those are huge swings. That's a 14-point swing if you go score a touchdown.
Look at this, Michael Joy. I mean, not only did they give up 30 points a game, you had 3 of your worst scoring games of the season back to back to back. You tied your lowest score at 13 versus Philly. Then you had 17 and 10. Like, it's happening on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's all falling apart.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. The stench can't come off after this one game.
But if they get this win and they look like themselves, they will feel better and more confident going into the
But what they're
postseason.
saying
And depending on how things go with Baltimore, which I believe Baltimore will win, but if Baltimore loses, you still end up winning the division and you're in a better position. So there's a lot that can happen this weekend to turn the momentum around.
But what Paul is saying is true, too, in this sense. That offense is never going to perform standing alone. It's an offense that performs coinciding with the defense.
Right.
What the defense turns the ball over, give them opportunity, they run the ball, and they make a few plays up the field. So they got to play harmonized football, and it starts on the defensive side if they got any chance.
Yeah. Subscribe here to get the latest from Speak, and go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.